Hey guys, it's Danny. Alrighty, today we're gonna do some orchid updates and we're gonna focus on some that I feel we didn't see in a long time, or actually you guys didn't see in a long time. I see them every day. Okay, so we're gonna do updates on the deciduous Dendrobiums, on the Angraecum, what else? I'll think of stuff. Not to worry, I know exactly what I didn't film in a very long time. First of all though, let's start with an orchid that I have there. It's a new orchid that I just received, but I wanna do an update on it because it's not what it's supposed to be. Alrighty, so this is the Cattlychea Siam Jade that I just received. I made a common order together with Anna Maria, and you've just seen this orchid unboxed last week, or was it this week? Anyway, the buds are opening and I have to keep this orchid in my hand for you to actually see the flower. This is the Avo or something of the sorts variety, which is supposed to be peloric, and looky here, it is not peloric. So I'm guessing this is the normal variety. Keep in mind, she's just opening up. This is not the final display of the bloom, but I can totally see she's not peloric, which is great because this orchid has a beautiful green color. And if you remember in that video, I was telling you that I'm not sure if I'm happy about the whole peloric situation. Behold, she's not peloric. I'm happy. Thank you, Anna. It is mislabeled, but it turned out better for me in the end. So this is the first day it is open. I don't feel any fragrance just yet, but I'm pretty sure it's not gonna happen today, maybe tomorrow or the following days. Alrighty, so let's start the update with the Angraecums. I currently still own two Angraecums. The sesquipedale and the Veitchii are doing spectacular. So this is the sesquipedale. Oh my goodness, I did not film this guy in such a long time. He was never sick or anything, never lost roots, although Angraecums, if you know a thing or two, are notorious, or people say they don't like to be repotted, they will lose roots, they will stale, blah blah, all of those things. I never had anything of the sorts with my Angraecums. Furthermore, the root system never died off just like that on me, not even when I transplanted this orchid in semi-hydroponics. Furthermore, he kind of likes it. In my opinion, Angraecums are not drought lovers such as Vandas. Well, to be fairly honest, no orchid likes extensive periods of drought, but for me the Vandas were pretty finicky when it came to too much moisture. Angraecums, on the other hand, which are always compared with Vandas, are a totally different beast in my opinion, and they will always do a lot better with high humidity. Therefore, I consider Angraecums perfect for semi-hydroponics, pretty much no matter how other people grow it. I do live in a pretty hot environment, so maybe that says something, but in my older environment, these guys did great with high moisture as well. So after all of these years of me growing this guy, given I never bloomed it, but also I never made it sick, I would say that at least the sesquipedale loves water. I really do hope I'll get a bloom from him this year. I keep him here next to my southern window and he gets pretty direct sunshine filtered by a sheer curtain. Right now it's early morning and this is a southern exposure, so there's no sun right now. But starting from 11 o'clock till the end of the day, he gets a lot of light. And the Veitchii, which I received from one of my lovely viewers, hey, his hairdo is not arranged. He is growing beautifully once again. If you remember last year, this guy started to produce a flower spike, but he never continued. The flower spike is still green and is somewhere in between those leaves. And I hope this year he will continue the flower spike or produce another one. The leaves have started to regain their size yet again, slowly. And yet again, I feel this orchid absolutely loves water. Last year I did a boo-boo. I tried to keep him outside together with the Vandas, and he did suffer from sunburn. You can see the remains here. I have more there. But as new leaves grew, those spots became a little hidden, so that's perfectly fine. The new leaves, as you can see, they look perfectly nice. He is receiving the same amount of light that the sesquipedale is receiving, and we shall see this winter if he decides to bloom. Next up, the Sedirea Japonica, which I think one of you guys wanted to see. Here she is in all her glory. Yes, she skipped blooming this year, and I don't really blame her. With all of these changes that I put my orchids through, you know, I kind of understand why. However, health-wise, just look at it. Look how big she grew. I don't know if you remember this one. It's exactly the same one in my care video or spotlight video, which was published 3 years ago or something. And I think overall I have her for almost 4 years. She's one of, actually the second Sedirea that I ever purchased. The first one I purchased, I think, in the same year that I started my YouTube channel, so in 2013, because I remember I filmed her with the iPhone. I purchased her from eBay. It had crown rot. I tried to save it. I kind of saved it, and then it kind of died off slowly. This is the second one that I purchased from Schwerter. But see, I don't remember if I purchased it in 2013 or 2014. And for the longest time, I had bad luck with her. She had tremendous amounts of spider mites on her. If you remember, she had that really bad spotting from the orchid flake virus. All of the leaves from that gloomy period are gone. The leaves that are left right now on this orchid are perfectly fine. They are green. She killed that nasty virus on her own, so there we go. I purchased her as a very young plant, not sure if seedling, but her size was pretty much like this for the longest time. It is this year that, or starting last year, that she started to create all of these really nice and big structures. So now that you know her history, you know, kind of understandable why she didn't bloom. She only bloomed once for me, but it's completely my fault, and from now on I'm gonna be a good mom. But look at her now, look how pretty she is. The root system is doing great as well. It is actively growing right now. I have one more visible tip here. The rest of the tips are inside the medium already, and I think she's loving semi-hydro. Now, what did I did wrong, apart from the spider mites? Well, yet again, I feel like the internet, or actually the care sheets on the internet, give us a false impression about this orchid. They make us believe that she would rather be dry than moist, which I find not to be true with this orchid. She's very similar with Phalaenopsis, the species actually, not necessarily the complex hybrids. For me, she always enjoyed a lot of moisture, but at the same time a lot of air. Of course, if I would maintain this orchid in a compacted, non-aerated environment and continuously moist, yes, I will definitely lose the roots. They are sensitive in this regard. However, ever since I got the ratio between air and water right, she's doing perfectly fine. She's never drying out, and you might know some experts suggest that you always let this orchid dry out. I never let it dry out, and this is the result. However, don't understand that if you're growing this orchid in bark, you should never let it dry out, or sphagnum moss. Those are totally different rules. I'm only speaking about clay right now. But as a final conclusion, she loves water, she loves air as well. Next up, the Phalaenopsis Lubbockensis. This is a species. I purchased this one last year, around this time, maybe in November, as a seedling. And she was really tiny. I think from her older leaves, only this one still remains. This is how tiny she was, this little leaf. And ever since then, she produced bigger and bigger and bigger leaves. Unbelievably bigger leaves. Look at her now. She was a seedling, can you believe this? And here's something very interesting. Now, you can see that the leaves are straight, but they have a little dent here, a little bendy thingy, right? All of them. This one has a bendy thingy too, this one that is growing right now. But the bendy thingy is really long in comparison to these ones. And the rest of the leaf, as you can see, is thickening up. So I'm thinking, how long will this leaf be? I am guessing it will be the very first mature leaf of this orchid. She is incredibly fast growing, I have to say. And when I purchased it, I was at peace with the idea that I will have to wait 4 or 5 years until this girl reaches blooming size, because this is a pretty huge orchid. The leaves can go as tall as 1 meter, if I'm not mistaken. She can bloom a little earlier than that, of course, but I was thinking, oh man, the number of leaves she needs to grow to reach that size will have to be immense. Well, not really. I find this orchid to be extremely fast growing in comparison to even Phalaenopsis. And I'm really hoping this leaf will be quite long, and I'm pretty sure this year she will not bloom. Next year though, if the growth rhythm continues, I'm pretty sure she will reach blooming size finally, and fingers crossed we'll have blooms next year. I cannot believe this, really. She was so tiny when I purchased it. I'll link it down below to that video so you can see what I'm talking about. Other than that, she's doing great. I tried keeping this orchid in a sort of upside down pot at first, and actually it was not a pot, it was a sort of basket, and she was drying out so fast she hated it. Yet again, maybe it's something to do with my environment, but these orchids that I continuously read that they would rather stay drier, opposite to Oncidiums, let's say, all of these orchids turn out very thirsty for me. And at this point, I am pretty sure it has to do with my environment, my medium, my setup, all of these things. I have fans in my greenhouse. The air continuously is circulated, so that helps with evaporation and all of that. So for these reasons, even though this orchid is notorious for liking to be mounted or in baskets and very airy environments, for me, it hated it. It got dehydrated. The leaves, you can see how succulent the leaves are. They were shriveled, they looked horrible. Ever since I potted it up, she has done wonderful. Alrighty, next up, here's an orchid you didn't properly see for more than a year, I think. This is the Dendrobium, aphyllum, or Pierardi. It kind of goes with both of these names, but I think aphyllum is a little bit more popular. So last year, he produced 2 canes, these ones in the back right here. You can see how tiny they were. This was one of the orchids who really suffered due to dehydration and the move and everything. And by the way, the falling leaves, don't worry, that's normal. It is a deciduous orchid, so in the end, all of the canes will lose their leaves. So what you see right here is not a sign of disease or stress, but definitely the size of the canes, total sign of stress last year. This year, however, the cane it produced does not fit in the frame. Look at this. It's wonderful. I was not expecting this guy to produce such a long cane. Unlike last year, this year he worked only on one single cane, and he's still growing. Yeah, he still has a leaf right here, so it might get longer than that, but I suspect not much longer. So this year he put all of his energy into one single cane, and what a cane it is. This orchid is not supposed to have thick canes. This is, I think, the normal thickness, maybe a little bit thicker than this, but not by much. So he's looking completely fine, completely mature. I received this orchid such a long time ago, maybe 4 years ago, from one of my friends. It was a seedling. It had 2 very tiny little canes. I grew it. It bloomed once or twice for me, but on very tiny canes. I think this is the cane who bloomed for the first time. So you can see how tiny it is. And I can only imagine this year how many blooms it will create. Well, at least I hope it will create a lot of blooms. Health-wise though, he is perfectly fine. He's definitely on the right track. Now here's an orchid that looks very different from what I just showed you. This is the Cattleya intermedia, variety Queenie. If you remember, this girl had a seed pod and I let it form just so I have the chance to film a seed pod, how it looks like, how the seeds look like, and I will share with you down below yet again that video if you missed it and would like to see it. But there's a downside with me letting the seed pod form. Now see, that took a lot of energy from the orchid, and the result was a very tiny and puny little cane this year. And this orchid has roots, and she did produce new roots right now. She is in good condition, I would say, but look at this. Because she put a lot of energy into that seed pod, there wasn't enough energy to produce a decent looking cane, and this is what happened. So needless to say, I'm really not interested in letting any of my orchids create seed pods, because something like this might happen again. It is not a rule. I don't think all of the orchids that produce seed pods are a little set back afterwards, given I've never had a lot of seed pods, but definitely it would appear that some orchids, which might be new to the collection, I purchased this orchid last year, so she's relatively new, due to the adjustment period of a new environment or maybe even repotting, immediately after, if I let a seed pod on the orchid, I don't think it's gonna end well, and I'm more interested in the orchid herself, not the seed pod. At this moment at least. I'll definitely not let my orchids develop seed pods. And if you remember, I sprinkled those seeds on her roots on the potting medium, and as expected, nothing was produced. Yeah, I just added some bioload to my pot. This orchid needs to be potted anyway. She's producing new roots. She's in active growth, so it's a great time to repot it. But there you go. This is the difference. It's quite dramatic. I'm really not happy with this one. And that's about it for today's updates. If you have an orchid in mind that you didn't see in a long time, just leave me a comment down below. In the next updates, I will try to feature it. So thank you so much for watching. Hope you've enjoyed this, and you know the drill by now. If you did enjoy it, give it a thumbs up because it helps me a lot. If you hated it, give it a thumbs down because that helps me as well. Subscribe to my channel for regular orchids and plants videos, and don't forget to turn on notifications so you never miss a video. And with that said, I'll see you all next time. Bye! So let's make the outro an update as well. I didn't want to insist too much on this orchid because I would rather film it as it is in bloom. This is my Brassavola Little Stars. This is one of the orchids that fell in that little accident a few months ago and broke a new growth. I was pretty devastated. I potted her up ever since then in semi-hydroponics. She's doing great and she has some flower spikes. I currently see only 2, they already have buds, but I do see some new growth. Some of the canes have produced a new growth instead of a flower spike, so I'm not sure. Maybe I'm gonna have multiple blooms from this orchid this year. She's a little shaken up by that fall she took. Some of the roots were damaged, the new growth, the leaves were damaged, so yeah, but luckily she's still blooming.